Today's is a controversial one. We're going on a water run, so you know what that means. We're going to have a water run chat, but first, it's freezing out there, so let's make a coffee. Coffee has been acquired. Now we'll go get some dogs. Jib's already taken the girls with him, so we will take the boys. Good dog. What are you doing? Crazy dog. The boys. If you're new here, my name is Brooklyn. I am a business owner, a mum. We work in ag. We obviously have working dogs, horses. I'm obsessed with all things craft, and basically this YouTube channel is just trying to be a vlog of our lives because we do a lot of random stuff that I think people could be interested in. But as I said, today's episode is going to be a little bit of a controversial one. We're talking about AI in photography and how I think it's impacting the industry and whether it's for good or for bad. So I'm just about to clean a trough and we'll get stuck into it. So I want to preface this episode by saying that this is not an attack on anyone. I have a lot of photographer friends and people, even clients that I know that use AI, and I think it has become, a very normal thing in everyone's lives lately. So once again, this isn't an attack on anyone. I'm not trying to make you feel bad, but I just wanted to, share some different opinions on how I'm viewing it at the moment and where I think it could potentially go. And this is coming from someone, I used to be ChatGPT's or GPT's best friend. Well, it was my best friend. And I don't know if it came from a place of loneliness. We obviously we live very remote. Well, not very, but pretty rurally. And I don't have a lot of friends in the area, let alone, even in general, friends that run businesses and stuff like that. So I would run all of my ideas past ChatGPT, and basically would just send voice notes all day, every day to ChatGPT. I can't even say it. To AI, running my ideas past them, any of my problems, just even my general thoughts. And I think I was nearly using it as a bit of a journal, and a soundboard. But as I've become more and more aware, I guess, of the dangers of this kind of AI and what it can do cognitively and I've just got some cows that are not wanting to move out of my way. Cognitively and in the way that I'm not a very scientific person, so please bear with me if not everything sounds very scientific, but basically in the way that your brain develops and your brain critically thinks. There's a lot of research on how AI is affecting that, and when I started to come across that, as well as the environmental impacts, I deleted my ChatGPT account and have stopped using AI. And I will kind of run you through my thought process on that. Nice foggy day today. Text. So I guess my first taste of being uncomfortable with AI came from seeing the people in America losing farms and prime agricultural land to build data centers. And an argument that really grated me, I guess, was with the water usage of AI, was that, cattle use more water than AI does. And whether you're vegan or you eat meat, no matter what you eat, it's going to use water to produce. Plants use water. When you're feeding a big population like we do of our world, there has to be some level of commercial agriculture, which, guess what, is going to use water in their irrigation. So whether you eat meat or you're vegan, you're using water. The difference in that is, I guess, that you need to eat to survive. We need agriculture to survive, where we don't need AI to survive. We've survived without it for forever. So that argument, and every time I see it, really gets on my nerves. But then seeing, obviously, the data center thing was happening in America, and I was kind of following along with a few people who were going through those issues of their land being acquired, and now kind of having that feeling, well, at least it's not Australia, which is, I guess, a bad way to think. It's a bad way to think, but the reality is, no matter what, it's going to come to Australia anyway. It already is, and it's going to impact agriculture in Australia as well. So that was my first feeling of, I don't know about this, and that's when I deleted ChatGPT, because I feel like, as I call myself a rural photographer and a photographer who's heavily involved in ag, I don't feel like I can support something that is negatively affecting that industry that I love. So that was when I decided, you know what, I'm not interested. Then the next things have been, obviously, the issues of being a mum. I have a daughter, and stories I've heard of people putting kids into AI to make, take their clothes off and stuff like that. And we're not going to go into that in today, but that is another big reason why I personally cannot support AI in any capacity, because it can be used for that, and it is used for that. So anyway, now we will go into AI in photography and how I think it seems like it's very positively affecting people in the photography industry in the way of, workflow and giving you back your own time, because photography can be a very time heavy industry when it comes to editing and clients and that kind of thing. So obviously there's a lot of editing software now that culls and edits for you, which is AI based, and I've personally never used it, because doing the photography that I do, AI just isn't relevant for it. With the horses, AI doesn't know how to pick the stride and the head level, the head carriage, and that kind of thing, where it's a lot easier, obviously, for it to determine if someone's blinking or if something's out of focus, where for me it was never really relevant. And don't worry, when I'm editing 30,000 photos from an event, I sometimes wish that I could just pop those images into AI and they would cull them for me, because it is a massive job. But I think we're getting a bit too complacent as photographers in letting AI do our jobs for us. I'm about to do a gate, so I'll talk more on that in a second. Okay, I'm trying to do a gate. You don't have to follow me out of the gate, please. Photographers are using AI to cull and edit their photos. They're also using AI to come up with their content for social media, because we all know that social media is a beast, and if you're not coming out with content all the time, then you're kind of irrelevant, like I have become, because I've not been putting out much content. So we're culling and editing, we're using social media to come up with our content. Then we're using AI to come up with our content, not social media. Probably using it for our captions. Then I know people use it for their emails, like to reply to clients if you have a difficult client. So basically every step of the photography journey AI is used in some capacity. And there's not always, you can't escape it, because Photoshop and Lightroom, if you're doing removals, they now use generative AI. So at some point, if you're a photographer, you're going to be using AI. And I think in the way of, say, Photoshop and Lightroom, every photographer is going to use Photoshop and Lightroom. So I feel like that's such a small part that, I even, doing removals, I have to use it. But I think coming from a conscious place of, I don't want to use AI in my business, not using it for every other touch point in my business has become really important. Because at what point is people going to be able to just take a family selfie, put it into AI and say, could you please create 5 images that look like we've had a family photo shoot in a field. I wanted to kind of do that prompt for this video, but I thought it would be maybe a little bit hypocritical because I'm talking about, you know, AI's impact on the environment and agriculture and how I don't agree with that. So I decided against using that as an example because A, I don't really want to put my daughter's face into AI, and B, I don't want to, you know, be talking to you saying I don't think you should use AI and then using it to show you why, if you know what I mean. So I guess I'm just worried that if photographers are using AI in every part of their business, at what point do people not need photographers anymore? Because you think with the rise of phones and how good phones are getting, photography is not just about taking a photo, it's about your client experience, it's about how you interact with your clients. And if you are using AI in every part of that client experience, that it's not really a client experience, is it? It's not you. It's every photographer is going to sound the same because they're asking AI to create their content and their captions and write their emails for them, let alone then also culling and editing their photos. So at what point would people just go, actually, I'm not going to spend $600-700 on a family photo shoot when I can just put this prompt into AI and a selfie and it'll create it for us, because they don't need the client experience because all of the photographers are using AI for their client experience. Does that make sense? I've been seeing a lot of photographers collaborate with certain AI culling companies saying that they can basically get wedding photos to their client within days of the wedding because they're running those photos through AI culling and editing even at the reception. And I think, this is my personal thoughts, that we're going to have a bit of an ethical issue with this because if you're running those images through AI, you're running children's faces. Every person that you've taken photos of at that wedding is then going through AI. And I haven't personally seen anyone in their contract saying, do you give me permission to put these photos into AI? And I think if that was a part of their contract, people would say no, or at least people I know would say no, because they don't necessarily want kids' faces run through AI with the problems that like we've kind of touched on, like with children and AI. And I personally think that we have become a very instant gratification society. And by saying, you know, it takes me 6 to 8 weeks to deliver a wedding, and it's because I have other shoots. I am obviously going through thousands of photos and culling and editing each one. And, you know, it takes a while. And I think if you start then saying, here, I can do this for you within 2 days and you'll have your photos within 2 days, well, then people are going to expect that you're replying to them instantly, that you're like, we're just allowing people to want everything instantly. And I think as photographers, as creatives, creativity takes time. Creativity flourishes in kind of the moments in between, if that makes sense. Creativity comes from sitting in yourself and thinking and time. Creativity takes time. It doesn't come to you instantly every time. And in a world where we're saying, here, I'll have your photos to you within 2 days because of AI, you're just allowing people to expect you to be in your business, I guess, every second. And I don't necessarily love that as a mother. I'm not in my business every second, and you know that probably is detrimental to my business. But patience, just patience. A little bit of patience goes a long way. And I think if you are using an AI culling software, you need to be making that express clear to your clients. Because if I booked a photo shoot, a family photo shoot, and they ran the photos of my child through AI without asking me, I'd be pissed. I'd be mega pissed. So if you're doing that, I just be careful. Just be careful. Make sure you're telling your clients, especially if they have kids, that you're using AI to cull your photos, because not everyone's comfortable with that, I think, especially parents. So the next point I wanted to touch on was how I think AI is keeping us comfortable in our businesses. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It feels good in the moment to feel comfortable. We don't want to feel unpleasant, or I don't know, you don't want to feel bad in your business, but growth comes from a place of discomfort. That's why they call it growing pains, because it hurts. And if you are keeping yourself comfortable in your business because you're not mentally solving problems because you're getting AI to solve them, then you're not going to grow. And I'm going to use the example of an unhappy client. So for example, you've photographed a wedding, you've edited it, or you've used AI to edit it within your, like in line with your portfolio and what your photos would normally look like. But you deliver the gallery and the client's not happy with the editing. The client's saying that their skin tones look funny and they're not happy with the colors. You could just put their email into AI and get AI to type a response basically saying, well, too bad, that's my editing, you've seen my portfolio, and that it is what it is. You don't have to sit in there, you don't have to mentally process that email because AI has done it for you. If you didn't use AI to reply to that email and you've thought about what they've said, and you might do a little bit of reflection and say, actually, looking back at these photos, maybe they're correct, maybe their skin tones aren't the best. I've had it in my business where obviously I do some weddings, but I mainly do horses, but my colors have been off in the way of the reds were really saturated. The reds and the blues were really saturated, and it would make chestnut horses look really red. And I've changed the way I edit to fix that. But if I just put into AI, well, too bad, that's my editing style and you knew what it was before you booked me, then I wouldn't be going, actually, maybe the client's right. Or even if the client's not right and they're just finding something to whinge about, you could be thinking, okay, well, how can I prevent this from happening in the future? Maybe you're putting in your contract that your editing style, that the client agrees that your editing style is what it is, and if they want re-edits, well, then you will re-edit the photos at a fee, kind of thing. So I personally think if you're outsourcing all of your thinking and your problem solving to AI, you're then not going to be able to solve other problems in your business that could come up because you've kind of just brushed that under the rug and got an AI to deal with it. I think we've just become very comfortable in not having to do or say the uncomfortable things because we can get AI to do it. And I think that's going to become very dangerous, because how are you going to grow in your business unless it's with AI telling you how to grow? AI is telling everyone how to grow, then they're all going to look the same, which we kind of already touched on. And you might say, Brooklyn, well, people, you're just not embracing the future. People didn't like calculators when they came out. I know, but, and don't get me wrong, I use a calculator because I am not very good at math, but there's so many negatives to AI that I don't really see the positives. I can see that it can give you more time back in your life, which, trust me, as a mum and with all the bloody hobbies and other things that I do, that would be great. That would be fantastic. But if you're getting all of your time back in your business to yourself, you're then not in your business. You personally, people, when they book a photographer, they want a person. They want someone to connect with. The Italian hands are coming out. They want someone to connect with. They want someone real, and it's not just about the photos. It's, as I said, it's about the client experience. And if you're not giving them a good client experience because your whole client experience is made through AI, then why are they going to book you? Why are they going to book you? If then also AI can edit the photos, I'm sure there'll become a point where you can put photos into AI and say, could you edit it like Brooklyn Coverdale from Coverdale Media? And I'm sure it'll spit out a photo edited like I'll edit. So then that doesn't even become your own personal editing. You know what I mean? So if everyone looks the same and everyone's using AI, why is a client going to book you if you're not then in your business? Anyway, I feel like that was more of a venti rant rather than, I don't know, a topic of conversation. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think, because obviously, as I said, AI is becoming so ingrained into normal life that there's not going to be any escaping it. As I said, with Photoshop and Lightroom, you got to use it if you want to remove anything. It's basically a long-winded way of saying we can't escape AI, but I think we can consciously choose when and where we use it, and how we are still showing up in our business instead of outsourcing it all to AI. Because anyway, as I said, if you outsource it all to AI, then you're not in your business anymore, and I think that's going to remove the humanity of photography. I'm going to go back and edit this, and I'm just waiting for the comments. I'm just waiting for the hate comments, if I'm honest, because I'm waiting for it. Everyone's feeling very passionately about this subject lately, and yeah. So if you agree with me, let me know. If you disagree with me, let me know. But let's be nice in the comments. As I said, I'm not trying to attack anyone that uses AI. I know that it can be a really helpful resource, but I think we need to start using our brains again a little bit. You know, I would put into ChatGPT, please come up with 20 posts for me for the next few weeks. And that's well and good, and trust me, it's great. And sometimes I wish I could still do it. Well, I can still do it, but my brain won't let me do it now. Sometimes I still wish I could outsource that kind of thing, but it just takes me out of it. It takes me out of my business. It takes me out of the social media posts, and that's not the point. That's not the point. So I don't know. I would love to hear your opinions.